We're sitting with Philip Rode, Executive Director of LSE Cities. Philip, could you tell me a little bit about LSE Cities' involvement in the development of the new urban agenda and Habitat 3?
Of course. So our main formal involvement was running or co-running the Policy Unit 4, which we led together with UCLG, United Cities and Local Governments. And that policy unit focused on questions of urban governance, capacity building, and institutional arrangements. So we had a group for about a year of 20 experts with whom we were developing draft papers, and then in the final run-up to an important New York meeting where we were briefing nation states on our ideas on urban governance, and ultimately produced a final document, which we were very happy that it ultimately became a formal UN document.
As an academic institution, LSE Cities has a certain role. And what is the function of academic partners within the new urban agenda?
So I would say there are at least three different dimensions one need to reflect upon. As a university, one of our primary objectives is to educate, to provide the opportunity for students to get their degrees, get their formal education, and that clearly is a very important component of the capacity building story. And we're not only doing this at the level of masters and bachelor programs, but increasingly in the context of executive training, mid-career development, where we're inviting professionals from across the world in urban disciplines to join us at the LSE for short courses, for summer courses, or indeed even for a new initiative on an executive masters in cities. So that's the first and probably the most important direct contribution to the capacity story. The second one is our research agenda. And here is really, I think, a role of independence paired with access to resources that allow us to be independent in our research and then contribute to the generation of knowledge which can be translated in the political process for hopefully better decision making. And the third role is something which comes from engaging a lot with people, being a player in the sort of public community, and taking on a role as a host of conversations, a coordinator of joint collaborations. And I think that's actually an element which in the policy unit 4 was a very important role we played. So less so as formal academics, but much more as hosts of conversations and as coordinators.
And as we move forward into implementation, what are more of the ways which you will be involved in rolling out the new urban agenda?
So there's a really interesting push now on the research front to understand much better how we can connect scientific analyses and research with actual policy impact. This is a conversation which has happened behind the scenes amongst key actors, key academic and research actors, not only within the UK and OECD country context, but also beyond. There are key partners from Africa and Asia very much supporting this idea, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it. There's a sort of call for action to really ensure that there's a new approach to linking academic knowledge, building and making with urban practice. I would say the second most important component goes back to the educational story. We will, I think, adjust a curricula, incorporate the many new ideas of also reporting, measurement, SDG integration as part of our formal teaching, and therefore creating an awareness as part of the formal academic training, but also within our master's degrees and so on, is really an important outcome of this piece of a new urban agenda. I would also add that there is then the more informal connection academics have with individual policymakers, with individual governments, where I think more through sort of personal exchange, we will see, I think, some new and hopefully innovative interpretations of the agenda that is now in front of us. Now, that interpretation is all about contextualizing these very sort of general ideas, bringing them down to specific cities, specific nation states, and in some ways, translating them to the reality.
What do you think are some of the ways in which academic expertise can really be leveraged in multi-stakeholder partnerships to implement the new urban agenda?
So this is a difficult question. I mean, the dimensional role of academics in some ways always involves talking to a diverse group of stakeholders. So in some sense, one is used to this. At the same time, there are very serious obligations for academics to do a certain kind of job and to do this very well. And I'm referring to proper academic peer-reviewed research, which often is something many other stakeholders, practitioners, politicians have very little appetite getting into. So what we are seeing now is in some ways trying to find a third way between, on the one hand, fulfilling these more academic obligations, but also training ourselves to then also become interpreters of this academic knowledge, what it can mean in terms of concrete action, and how we can then maybe on the back of a more academic publication produce a policy paper, produce even a sort of video message, something which is more packaged. We are now operating a lot with new technologies, film and video, on all sorts of online opportunities to produce more engaging material that doesn't only speak to our science community, but to the broader church of stakeholders you're referring to.
That's interesting because we have a particular focus on media and the role of communication and its importance in both implementing the new urban agenda and assessing it as it rolls out. What do you think might be some of the synergies between academia and journalism and media?
So there's actually one really important element which is specifically referred to in the new urban agenda, which will not be advanced significantly without academics, and which at the same time has direct effects on and implications for communication. And what I'm referring to is geospatial analysis. GIS is a very important component of, you could call it, digital era governance. It is also an increasingly important component for many academic colleagues working with more robust data sets and really trying to relate socioeconomic data to spatial configurations in cities. So this is an area which then, on the basis of this analysis, as a side product, often produces very striking, very clear images. And I think they have already proved to make a difference for policy discourses. Powerful images that sort of communicate complicated messages in a relatively simple way. So I would, in some way, stick to this as a wonderful example where we have new opportunities.
Thank you very much.